Hello, I'm Anand Naidu and welcome to a special edition of The Heat. One of the main pillars of the United Nations Charter is human rights, the right to life, liberty and security. Much of the world says human rights are being ignored in the Israel-Palestine conflict, where over 65,000 Palestinians have been killed, children are going hungry, and thousands of families have been forced to flee their homes. This week at the United Nations, France and Saudi Arabia co-chaired a conference to garner support for a two-state solution. France also joined Britain, Canada, Belgium and Australia in formally declaring its recognition of a Palestinian state. Riyad Mansour, the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, made this plea before the UN Security Council.
Recognition of the state of Palestine is an affirmation that the world rejects such denial, rejects the attempts at our destruction and supports our right to existence, our right to self-determination. And that is not a gift, this is a right, and the Palestinian people have been struggling for almost 100 years for the attainment of such a right.
My colleague Elaine Reyes spoke with Philippe Lazzarini in New York. He's the Commissioner General of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East.
Commissioner General, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The conflict in Gaza, as we know, has reached unprecedented levels of destruction and displacement. From your vantage point as UNRWA Commissioner General, what is the humanitarian situation on the ground as we speak, and how do you respond to those who argue that Palestinians are being deliberately forced out to make room for Israeli control?
You know, I believe it's more and more difficult to describe the humanitarian situation. We are almost out of words. I think what Palestinians in Gaza are going through, it's hell in all its possible facets. We have seen over the last 20 months already a total destruction. We have seen that there is absolutely no safe place for the Gazan. We have seen that health center, hospitals, schools, worship places have been targeted. We have seen an extraordinary toll within the population. More than 65,000 people have been killed, among them a vast majority of civilian and women and children. And now Gaza is also described as being a place suffering of starvation. A famine has been declared, and weeks after the famine has been declared, you have an entire population in the north being forced again to move, and an unprecedented military operation taking place. Gaza is not only reduced in rubble, but it's almost reduced into dust right now. So it's unbelievable. Now, where is this leading us? Indeed, the entire population is forced to move from the north to the south. They will be parked in the south like a very large, overcrowded, open prison or concentration camp. The question is, will the people in the Gaza be forced out of the Gaza Strip? Will Gaza continue, yes or not, to be the homeland of the Palestinian? I really hope so, but today no one can have any certainty right now.
As we know, several countries, most recently France, several countries, including Canada, Australia, have recognized Palestine as a state. I want to get your reaction to that, and if this recent movement is going to make any difference for the people in Gaza, the situation on the ground, and also a path toward peace. What does this do?
It is true that today a number of countries are also recognizing the state of Palestine. In reality, they are joining already 140 member states who did already recognize the state of Palestine. I believe it's definitely an important milestone. It's also a way to say that we need to do so now, because we have never been so far away from the reality of a two-state solution. And if we do not wake up now and genuinely commit politically to such a solution, that might never happen. So I believe it cannot be a goal in itself. The real war will have to start now. There is a kind of a roadmap also which has been agreed by the General Assembly a few days ago, which is the New York Declaration, which basically also tells what is expected to make this two-state solution a reality. So the declaration per se is not enough to make a change on the ground, but what could make a difference on the ground is a genuine commitment to achieve, to start with, a ceasefire, and once a ceasefire is in place, to implement the New York Declaration.
So do you think this is helpful to get to a ceasefire?
I do believe it is helpful to force the member states to show the real and genuine commitment to promote a political solution and to be more invested in a peace process.
UNRWA has been accused by its critics of being politicized, while its defenders, of course, say that what UNRWA does is indispensable. How do you strike the balance between being a humanitarian, a neutral humanitarian agency, and speaking on issues that are political?
You know, in this part of the world, everything is political. We are a human development focused organization, but evolving in an extremely divided emotional environment, highly politicized. I keep reminding colleagues that even talking about waste management in a Palestinian refugee camp can be read through a political lens. So it is true that the agency has been accused, especially since October 2023, of being politically biased, of having been infiltrated by Palestinian faction, including the Hamas or the Jihad. But in reality, all these attacks are part of disinformation campaign, which motivation is to strip the Palestinian from the refugee statute, dismantling the agency, getting rid of the agency. In reality, aims at stripping the Palestinian from this statute because there is a belief in Israel that the agency is perpetuating the dependency of the Palestinian refugees. But in reality, what's perpetuate the agency and the Palestinian refugee is nothing else than the absence of a political solution.
China has become more active at the United Nations, including when it comes to Middle East issues. From your perspective, what role can China play in supporting UNRWA's work and contributing to a fair and lasting resolution of the Palestinian question?
China has politically always been a strong supporter of the agency mandate, has always promoted, in fact, the renewal of the mandate in the absence of a political solution. I do believe that China can be much more now involved in supporting also the agency to have the necessary resource to fully implement what member states, including China, expect us to do. We should never forget that the primary role of the agency in the absence of a political solution is to provide public-like services to one of the most destitute communities across the region, being the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Basically, we provide primary, secondary education, we provide primary health, we function like a public-like institution, but we have none of the fiscal tools. We are not covered by the regular budget of the United Nations. We primarily depend on voluntary contribution. And I do believe that in that sense, any political support the agency is receiving from the member state should be accompanied by matching resources.
2025 is a big year here at the United Nations, marking 80 years since its founding. Do you believe that the UN has lived up to its founding principles? And what change needs to happen for it to remain relevant in the decades ahead?
Well, it's an important question. There is absolutely no doubt that the United Nations, which symbolize the commitment of the international community into multilateralism, into a rule-based order that we have inherited from World War II, is under assault. We have also seen that an agency like UNRWA is under severe assault. International humanitarian law also is at risk of becoming irrelevant because of its, I would say, double gears application, and especially in the context we were referring to, the Middle East. So more than ever, the UN80 should be the occasion of a reaffirmation of the member state that there is no alternative. We are in a world where there is more and more multipolarism, regionalism, number of countries prefer to promote national agenda first, but in reality, many of the global problems will not be addressed without talking to each other. I do believe that the UN will continue to be relevant. There is no better convening place than the United Nations, but it needs to be treated better than it has been over the last few years.
Commissioner General Lazzarini, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Despite the will of the United Nations, Israel has intensified its airstrikes and ground operations in Gaza City, forcing tens of thousands of Palestinians to flee. The UN says famine is widespread across the enclave and health services are collapsing. Joining us now from London is Abdel Atwan. He is the editor-in-chief of al-Youm. Also with us from London, Yossi Meckelberg is a senior consulting fellow with the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. And Michael Link is a professor emeritus of law at Western University and a former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. He joins us from Ontario in Canada. Good to have all of you with us. Thanks for being with us. Michael Link, let me start with you. And let's start with this conference that was co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia at the United Nations. This conference called to support a two-state solution. This is what the French President Emmanuel Macron had to say. Let's listen.
Le temps est venu de libérer les 48. The time has come to free the 48 hostages held by Hamas. The time has come to stop the war, the bombings in Gaza, the massacres, and the fleeing populations. The time has come because the urgency is everywhere. The time for peace has come because we are moments away from no longer being able to grasp it.
So, Michael, what do you make of this call? I mean, is this something that could happen in reality? Because Israel's leaders have made it very clear there's going to be no two states.
Well, let's look at the idea of a two-state solution and the recommendation to recognize a Palestinian state on two levels. I think on one level, at the political and legal level, this is an important step forward. It recognizes Palestinian self-determination from leaders in the global north who are fairly closely aligned with Israel. There's a recognition by these global North leaders that their populations are overwhelmingly appalled at what they're seeing and want to be able to find some resolution, some compassionate peace coming to the Middle East. But at another level, whether or not there can ever be a Palestinian state on the ground is an open question. In my mind, the mathematics of a Palestinian state are grim. Right now, we have 750,000 Israeli settlers and 360 Israeli settlements, all of them illegal under international law, in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. President Macron said that we are minutes away from the window closing for a Palestinian state. And I must say, for someone who's been following this for some time, we've heard this 5 minutes to midnight or 1 minute to midnight phrase for a long time. John Kerry said in 2013, when he was announcing as Secretary of State that he was going to launch an American-led peace process, when there were 360,000 Israeli settlers in the occupied territory, that there is a window of 18 to 24 months or it's all over. Same thing happened in 2016 when the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 2334, condemning the settlements as a flagrant violation under international law. It said that the settlements were, I'm quoting, dangerously imperiling the prospects of a Palestinian state. At that time, there were 400,000 Israeli settlers. At what point do you say that Israel has been so successful with its settlement enterprise that the prospects for a Palestinian state have now should be receiving the last rites? If the time hasn't come yet, then how many more settlers will you wind up saying Israel can put in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and the idea is dead?
Yossi Meckelberg, Israel has responded to this call for two states, as well as the recognition of Palestinian statehood by France, Britain, Canada, Australia, and Belgium, as something that rewards Hamas. How do you see it?
I think this is the sort of rhetoric you would expect from the Netanyahu government and his ultra-nationalist messianic partners. With this government, probably there won't be a peaceful solution to this conflict. So we need to look beyond this government. There will hopefully be election within, according to the law, in Israel within a year, and start preparing for the possibility of a different government that is ready to negotiate in good faith. Hopefully there will also be election among, within the Palestinian occupied territories. A new leadership would emerge there too, and maybe with alternative leaderships. Then there will be space for changing the discourse from conflict to peace, and also leaderships that are ready to negotiate seriously and sincerely a two-state solution. And of course, what Michael says, it's a possibility that, we pass this point that a two-state solution is possible. I hope this is not the case. And then, therefore, we need to think about a two-state solution within the realities that we have right now, but as long as we adhere to the values that everyone between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea has the same political, social, and human rights, and the right of self-determination of both people recognized. And in my mind, probably because of exactly what was just described, possibly confederation between Israel and Palestine is the most viable option.
Abdel Bari Atwan, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he's called Palestinian statehood a right, not a reward, as the Israelis were saying, a reward for Hamas. But will this recognition of statehood by these Western states, or this call for two states, change anything on the ground for Palestinians? I mean, how much credibility do you attach to it? Because, I mean, we have some of these states which actually are saying we recognize a Palestinian state. At the same time, they continue to supply weapons to Israel.
Well, I'm surprised, when I heard that this kind of stability, this kind of actually two-state solution is a reward to Hamas. Why it is not a reward to the Palestinian people? Why it is not a reward to the Palestinian National Authority, which recognized Israel and actually sacrificed 80% of historic Palestine in order to get peace? Why it is not a reward to the Middle East itself area to have stability, to have enough wars for people there who are looking for peace and doing their best actually to please United States and also to please the Israeli when they set up diplomatic relation and embassies for the Israeli and their territories. I believe the problem is Trump is not honest broker. And the Israeli actually are getting everything of him. And also of all these countries who believe in two-state solution or advocate for two-state solution. First, they should stop all kinds of weapons to Israel. Second, actually, they should actually impose some sort of punishment, punishment on the Israeli because they committed suicide in Gaza. 65,000 people were killed. Half of them are children. So this is, the continual war and support of Israel as a state.
Michael, do you agree with that these calls for two states, as well as recognizing a Palestinian state, are just words if they are not accompanied by the threat of sanctions by the suspension of weapons deliveries?
Yes, let's assume that a Palestinian state is still a possibility, notwithstanding what I said a few minutes ago regarding the number of Israeli settlers in the occupied territory. If that was the case, then we would expect to see leaders in the global north, as they repeat the call for a two-state solution, as they announce the recognition of a Palestinian state, would also have among themselves a defined and effective political strategy to achieve that. This I have never seen. In the 20 years since the global north has said that there should be a Palestinian state and living side by side with Israel, they have done nothing as they've watched the settlement numbers wind up growing. Now that we are at 750,000 Israeli settlers, what's your strategy for trying to get there? What's your strategy for actually forcing a belligerent Israeli leadership from relinquishing its death grip on East Jerusalem and the West Bank and what it's done in Gaza to be able to achieve a Palestinian state that's going to be economically viable and politically viable for the Palestinians?
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Michael, one other thing, one other formidable obstacle is United States opposition to any kind of change in this impasse that we see right now. I mean, just last week, the United States vetoed another resolution which called for a ceasefire in Gaza. As long as the United States continues to veto these kinds of resolutions, can we see any progress?
Alas, no. And that's what Benjamin Netanyahu is counting on. That's why we see such strong rhetoric coming from him, defiant rhetoric, saying this past week that there will never be a Palestinian state. I would expect he's going to repeat that on Friday when he appears before the United Nations. And he knows he can say that in defiance of what now most of the global north, as well as the rest of the world, has been saying for a long time. There must be a Palestinian state, because he knows how unshakable the alliance is with the U.S.
Yeah.
Just last week, the United States announced it was granting another $6 billion in weapons sales to Israel to replenish lost during the war on Gaza.
Yeah. Yossi Mekelberg, there was one significant development this week, and that was Spain and Italy say they will deploy naval vessels to join that Gaza flotilla, which is carrying aid to Gaza. I mean, this would mark the first time that Western powers have deployed their military in support of the Palestinians. I mean, how significant is this?
I think it is significant, and I think that the tide is turning. And the fact that, bear in mind, those are two members of NATO. And when Israel, whatever one thing about flotilla and how it's going to help, this is civil society activity. It has to be respected. It's not really threatening Israel. Israel might find it as a nuisance, but that's all right. That's part of what happens in democracies. But the fact that apparently, allegedly, they're using drones and other means to try to stop it, if they do it while they are protected by Spanish or Italian Navy, then they are facing members of NATO. This will definitely change the equation there in the relation there.
Just on that point of the role that Netanyahu has been playing in all of this, Yossi Mekelberg, there was a piece, an op-ed piece that was written in the New York Times earlier this week by Benny Gantz, the former defense minister. He says, this is not the view of just Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a bipartisan consensus in Israel. All the parties agree on this, that there will be no role for the Palestinians.
If you look at the public opinion polling in Israel, there is doubt if Benny Gantz will enter into after the next election into the Knesset. But yes, right now the discourse is almost as it's entrenched of what happened in October 7 two years ago, and there is not enough courageous leadership within the opposition to challenge this paradigm that of no Palestinian state.
Abdel Bari Atwan, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, as well as the Palestinian delegation, were denied visas to come to the United Nations to address the General Assembly. But Mahmoud Abbas did address the Assembly via video, and again he talked about the hopes and wishes of the Palestinians. But what kind of credibility can we attach to the Palestinian Authority? Because if we look at a poll that was done in May, it showed that support for Fatah, which is the main party in the PA, is at 19%. Support for Hamas in that same poll was 32%.
This is the problem. No Palestinian attending this conference, and they are talking about the future of the Palestinian, the future of Gaza Strip. I believe this is the ignorance of the United States, and also the ignoring the Palestinian people and what is happening on the ground. This is the biggest obstacle in reaching peace in the Middle East in particular. So I think it was actually a humiliation to Abbas, who gave the American everything, who gave the Israeli everything, and in the end, they revoked his visa to come to United Nations and deliver his speech. How can we trust this administration if they do this to Mahmoud Abbas, that's supposed to be the representative of the Palestinian people, which I don't actually accept at all.
Okay, Abdel Bari Atwan. Okay, Abdel Bari Atwan, I've just got a minute left, and I want to get your view on this. US President Trump, he met with Arab leaders on Tuesday and reportedly promised that Israel would not be allowed to annex the West Bank. Nothing was said about Gaza. The Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan described the meeting as fruitful. Very quickly, if you could tell us, what's your assessment of that?
Well, to be honest, we have to wait until Monday when Trump meets Netanyahu. Netanyahu, who decide the future policies of the United States, actually. Netanyahu several times revoked a lot of decision of Trump and to make him change his mind completely. So I believe that Netanyahu will go back from Washington to Tel Aviv, and then he may declare the annexation of the West Bank and some sort of adoption to the Israeli Knesset, which actually issued a decree that West Bank should be actually annexed immediately. So I believe Netanyahu, he is the ruler of the United States, and he is the decision maker when it comes to the Palestinians.
Okay, Michael, one final point, and there was a conference at the United Nations this week. It was called the Call to Action for Palestinian Children. It was attended by dozens of diplomats from across the globe. It heard first-person stories from Palestinian children. Do you expect anything to come of this?
I think among those with the humanitarian heart at the United Nations, this will be a deeply moving summit organized by civil society organizations. Let's keep in mind that over 20,000 Palestinian children have now been killed, according to Save the Children, since October 2023. Palestinian children are among those who are facing famine and starvation. We have another 21,000 Palestinian children who have been left disabled for life as a result of this particular war. And the United Nations Secretary General put Israel on the shame list back in June of countries who have violated children's rights in the course of armed conflict. Will this be enough in order to be able to move hearts and minds with respect to their attitude towards Israel and the conducting its war? We will have to wait and see.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's all for this edition of our special UN series. Stay with us for more throughout the week. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington.